Setting up the biggest business location. Establishing the interaction space. So remember, the interaction space is where you would communicate the physical or virtual space within the industry. It's best to remember that setting up the business location is very, very important when we're thinking about the permits and licenses that are required for your type of business. Before determining what permits and licenses are needed for your business, make sure you understand the type of business industry your company will be engaged in, where the business will be based, because location is very important to the rules and regulations, and where the business will interact with the customers. So for example, you can have a home-based business as a plumber, but you engage or interact with your customers out at their house. Okay, so that would be one situation where your main space is where the business is based, but then you're interacting with the customers in another space. It could also be, you know, a business where you have an online sales. You have your own website, and your business may be based in your home, but you're interacting with customers in a different state. Those can change the permits and licenses that you'll need to set up your business. And then finally, what type of business organization you are, whether you're an LLC, corporation, sole proprietor. So these will all influence what permits and licenses you need. So registering your business, filing permits and licenses for local, state, and federal registration depends on many factors. You know, the rules and regulations for your type of business, where you're located, type of industry, etc. Where and how your business is set up will determine the business structural requirements, the local requirements, state and federal requirements. And there's also some internal and banking requirements. So let's look at those a little bit later. So one of the questions that is often asked of students is, what's the difference between a permit and license? I often see it used and they sound very similar. A permit is a legal document that offers proof of compliance with certain city or state laws regulating structural appearances, the safety, as well as the sale of products. The government permits the business to operate this type of business. A license is a legal document that grants a business the right to operate a business in your city. Depending on your business, there are other licenses that may also be required. So license says that you have the permission, the right to operate that business. But we also see that it's often confusing, the difference between a permit and license. Generally, if you see permit and license, they may be used interchangeably. Some local areas say you need a basic business permit to run your business, and other cities might say you need a business license. So they can often be interchanged. So don't get too confused on what they are, on what the minute differences between the two terms. But here is a couple definitions that may help you. Okay, so depending on your business structure, remember if you're a LLC, corporation, sole proprietorship, one of the steps is registering that entity. Okay, corporations are often registered at the state level. And based on your business structure type, it's best to first identify what state you're going to be registering your entity in and create a checklist to help navigate the state constitution. If we look at the state constitution, the codified law here, it can be very, very complex and hard to navigate. Again, in an earlier video, we recommended joining an industry association to help you navigate that checklist, but we'll also work with you to practice that skill of developing a checklist within your group presentation. An attorney or other source, if you don't have some good documents from an industry association, an attorney can help you create that checklist, right? There's also simple Google searches or organizations or publications out there that can help you develop a checklist of steps you need to form. So for example, NOLO is a well-respected publisher, and they have the 8 steps you need to form an LLC in California, and it's written by a lawyer. Okay, so the instructor will help you with your business recommendations on developing that list. It will be one of the project's assignments that you'll work on in a group. The next are local requirements, looking at the local requirements you need to fill out. So often the most common permits or licenses that you'll need are the business permit or tax license. So these are often filed whether you have an entity registered with the state or not. And most businesses need a business permit or tax license in the area that you have your business based. Okay, and so that just is a local registration that allows you to do business or set up a business in that area. The next is a resale certificate. It's also sometimes called a seller's permit to resell goods. What is this? A seller's permit is often used for businesses that are buying goods wholesale and then they resell them. So a common example we would have is somebody is creating masks or purses or aprons or something, and they are have taken the sewn business class, and they're looking to create a business by buying materials from a fabric shop and then sewing them together and reselling them. So if you were to go down to your fabric store and get all the materials and you bring it to the register, you might pay sales tax on it. But if you had a seller's permit and the intent was to resell it again, you could show that business, that wholesaler, your resale certificate, and they would waive the sales tax. And the expectation from the government is that you would resell it to other customers and collect sales tax then, and you would pay the sales tax onto the government. So generally that's a good thing to have if you're reselling goods. Another thing that's very helpful is a doing business as or fictitious business name statement. So if your plan is to name your business something different than your name or your business name, generally you want to file a fictitious business name statement. This is often best used for sole proprietors. So instead of going by your own personal name, you could create a fictitious business name that's not yours, and you can file it so that the government knows that you're operating under a different name. So this is generally used in that circumstance. It can be used by corporations or LLCs, although those entities are generally named differently than your name is anyway. So a fictitious business name for a corporation would generally be a secondary name. Okay, and then your instructor can answer some questions on that if you're interested in learning more. Another document that's really, really helpful is a tax ID number or EIN number. That stands for Employment Identification Number. When businesses interact with each other, they generally want to know what is the entity specifically they're doing business with. So they will ask you for information about your business. If you're a sole proprietor, you could provide them with your social security number. If you have a corporation, you could show them the corporation's tax ID number. The problem is oftentimes if you're a sole proprietor and you're asked for this information, you may not want to be giving out your social security number to every business that you're interacting with. So you can request from the federal government free of charge, at least at the posting of this video, a free EIN number to replace, I wouldn't say it would replace your social security number, but you would use it instead of your social security number when you're providing other companies your information. On top of that, you'll need all your permits, depending on what you need to do. So if you're doing construction on a retail space that you're opening up, you may need construction permits. If you're having people into your place of business, you may need a fire permit. And then there's other, based on your industry, health, auto, hair, might require other type of permits or licenses. Registering at the state level, the business formation type often determines requirements. Some filing requirements may include the initial reports to startup, annual report, statement filing fees, franchise tax, articles of amendment. These are all common ones. And in this document here, how to form an LLC in California, these are some of the things you'll need to do. Choose a name for your business, file articles of organization with the Secretary of State, and these are specific to California. Choose a registered agent, decide on member versus management, prepare an operating agreement, file annual reports, pay your taxes, etc. Federal requirements. Generally, most businesses don't have a lot of federal requirements they need to fulfill, but it really depends on the industry you're in. So the federal government generally wants to keep track of businesses that are doing interstate travel or on special industries. And so there's a link in the slides about some specific business activities that are generally watched closely by the federal government that you may have specific licenses or permits to operate this type of business. So business activities like agricultural, alcoholic beverages, aviation, firearms, fish and wildlife, drilling, mining, nuclear energy, radio and television broadcasting, and transportation, those generally have state-to-state interaction that the federal government wants to regulate. So in a general sense, that's what it needs. But again, pay attention to your industry association, your attorney, or we'll have a source to help you look up some of the federal permits and licenses that may apply to your type of business. So there are other requirements you need to register your business. So depending on the type of business you have, you may want to set up processes such as daily and monthly statements. You may have annual meetings with investors. Your bank may require specific documents. Well, there's a link in here that shows from Wells Fargo. It shows you the different type of organization, and I believe it asks you for your zip code first. Again, it always stems to where you're located, the type of permits you need. But this link in the slide shows what Wells Fargo needs in order to set up a bank account for a sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, corporation, or clubs. Okay. So the important part is to create a checklist, and each state will often help businesses navigate the permits and licenses that regulate business. In California, they have created a website, calgold.ca.gov, which is actually very helpful. So you can type in your city, and if you're in San Diego, California, and the type of business you have, if you have a car wash, for example. So the key things are the type of business you run and where it's located. You can search, and they'll show you all the federal, state, regional, county, and city permits and licenses you'll need, a little description of it, and the location and a website of where you go to learn more information. One thing I can caution you is that when you're looking at calgold.ca.gov, they'll list all the possible, I shouldn't say all, there may be few that are not listed. They'll list all the different types of permits and licenses you need, but they might list ones that you don't need. So for example, if you have a car wash, but it is one of those self-car washes, and you don't have any employees, then you might not need the workers' compensation information, right? So it's up to you to ask yourself, look at each one that is on the list, but then ask yourself, do I really need this? And you may not need all of them, but it's a good list for you to go and check through. So this is something that may help you develop that checklist. All right.